You are listening to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. And once again, we are coming to you live from the PMI Global Congress 2014 in Phoenix. With me today is Jack Ferraro. Welcome back.
Thank you, Cornelius. Great to be here today.
Right. This is not your first Congress. In fact, this is, the fifth, sixth that you're speaking at, I think.
This is, I think it's my sixth Congress. I did a bunch about 5 or 6 years ago and sort of getting back on the speaker circuit the last few years.
Yeah. How do you select your topic? Your topic is 5 competencies to successfully drive strategic initiatives.
That's a good question. My content is always about trying to meet the practitioners where they are and give content that is relevant and hopefully challenge my attendees to maybe think a little bit different. So I think my selection process is trying to stay current with what's going on in the industry, what are some of the challenges we're facing, and as practitioners, myself, I see this all the time. So what am I running into? How are we dealing with it? How are my fellow practitioners dealing with it? And ultimately, I'm here to try to give a call to action, to basically give something that the attendees can act upon.
And once you selected your presentation topic, I believe you have to submit it to PMI, right? And they review it and then it gets approved or disapproved. How does that work?
Typically about 6 months or 7 months before an event like this, PMI has a call for presentation. So you go to their website, you complete a profile, and you can submit your presentation. And there's a web form that you complete with your title, your content, your abstract, some references, and it goes into a bucket, and there's an evaluation process where PMI looks at what they want to convey, what are the focus areas that they want to have in their congresses, and they go through and select the presenters. So I've been very fortunate to have been selected numerous times.
Your presentation is 5 competencies to successfully drive strategic initiatives. Let's just briefly list them. What are the 5 competencies? We'll get into the details later on, but let's just name them.
Sure. Very simple. We start out, if you want to construct a pyramid in your head, at the bottom of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid, we have our project management knowledge, skills, and experience. The idea is that our knowledge, we have to acquire knowledge to enhance our skills, and we have to take those skills and execute them so we can drive learning experiences as practitioners. We have subject matter expertise, which is understanding our customer, our application area that we're in, and knowing something about our customer. We have trust-based relationships is the third one, and consultative leadership and courage are the 5.
Okay, and why are these important to our listeners? What will they get out of our conversation?
My goal has been to sort of provide a framework, an actionable framework that they can bring into each project to say, here are the competencies that I need to continue to build, not just for me as a practitioner, but for each specific project. How do I continue to build these competencies and use them to drive organizational change and drive value into our organizations?
All right. And with that out of the way, we are going to take a turn to the left-hand side and take a step back and go into the direction that nobody probably expected. Let's go back to 2007, to the presentation that you gave at the Global Congress then. What prediction did you make at that time?
Well, thanks for bringing that up. And I was doing some research and preparing for this presentation, and I went back and looked at some of my previous presentations. And back in 2007, before the recession hit, things were pretty good in the project management landscape. Companies were putting a lot of money into project management, into methodologies, into PMOs. PMP certifications were growing at a rapid rate. It was a pretty healthy time for us in an industry. And I decided to say, even though it's a healthy time, I challenged my attendees of that presentation to redefine themselves as a critical part of their organization. And if we fail to do that, I basically said, if we don't redefine ourselves, somebody else will redefine ourselves. And I think some of that has happened over the last few years.
How has that happened?
Well, as we have come out of the recession and there's been a recovery, a lot of the industries are starting to recover, not all of them, but IT generally has done well. Software development, anything to do with digital media has done really well if you look at the statistics. And a lot of our practitioners are practicing in those areas. And I think what has really happened, or what may be sort of the elephant in the room for a lot of practitioners, is Agile has emerged as really sort of the dominant methodology in a lot of our organizations. And we've started to essentially lose control of some of the terms, okay? We have user stories that replace work breakdown structures. We have affinity estimating that have replaced our top-down or bottom-up or three-point estimates. We have Scrum Masters. Where is the role of the project manager in all of this? I think a lot of people are wrestling with.
Right, so you're saying in 2007 you predicted we have to redefine ourselves, otherwise someone else will redefine us for us. Now Agile has arrived and they have redefined us. What exactly have they done to the project manager role?
They have redefined us, and they've redefined us in a way where I think, for lack of a better term, I think they've kicked us to the side.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think there's an opportunity, right? Change brings opportunity, and I think we have to look at it in a positive viewpoint. I work on numerous projects. I'm actually implementing projects that are using Agile, implementing Agile into some PMOs with my customers. So Agile is a very powerful methodology. So I'm not here to criticize the methodology, but as practitioners, we have to, I think, be very honest with ourselves in terms of what does Agile mean to us. Most people, or if you look at the statistics, I think a study was done last year where organizations that are using Agile, about 57% of them actually practice Scrum as a methodology. So if you actually go out to the Scrum Alliance website and actually, what do they say the project manager role is? There basically is no role for the project manager. What I see what has happened is that they've taken the project manager role and they've basically have split it into multiple roles. A Scrum Master, which helps facilitate, helps grow the team, practices servant leadership. A product owner, which manages the relationship with the customer and prioritizes your backlog. And the project manager really doesn't fit into any of those roles very, very cleanly.
And you're not actually paraphrasing here, because on the scrumalliance.org website, you show a screenshot in your presentation where it clearly states a project manager should not become a Scrum Master.
Yeah, not only is there not a role defined in the Scrum Alliance for the project manager, but they actually even say that we shouldn't even try to convert project managers to Scrum Masters because we don't have the mindset. Now, I'm not just trying to say, okay, well, here's a website. Anybody can put up a website and write this stuff. I mean, I'm seeing this in the organizations that I work with, all right? I see executives, CIOs saying, we want to be agile. We don't want the details around this project management. We don't want to see the detailed schedule. That hasn't worked for us, right? We want to do something different. And Agile can be a very powerful tool, don't get me wrong. However, if we don't practice and implement Agile right, it could have consequences for the organization. But more importantly, for here, what my message is let's be honest with ourselves. Why has this happened? This has happened not because people came up with a brilliant idea and wrote a manifesto. This happened because people wanted to change. Something was driving this change. And I think some of that is because what we have done as a community, we focus too much on process. We focus too much on standardization. We commoditized our services, our project management services, and those services became less and less distinguishable and of less value. And people decided, we don't want that service anymore. We're going in a different direction. We're going Agile.
Okay. I did an interview with Dave Cornelius about the future role of the project manager in Agile. He showed us which roles we can roll into when Agile is coming our way. You're offering a different perspective. You're saying you don't necessarily have to go into Agile. You can become a strategic project leader. Can you define the strategic project leader to us?
Absolutely. And again, Agile is just another tool or methodology that we should be using as strategic project leaders, whether it's traditional project management or Agile. We should be familiar with these different techniques and types of project management approaches and delivery approaches for our customers. But becoming a strategic project leader, what we're trying to do is position us in a different way in the organization where we are initiating and sustaining transformational change in our organization. And I still think that that is the key question that many executives are trying to answer themselves. How do I initiate and sustain change across the organization? So we're trying to get strategic project leaders to move out of the typical projects, right? The projects that constantly come up through the PMO that are just a series of ongoing tasks and coordination. We're trying to move those types of projects, push us into a coordinator role, where essentially what we're doing is we're tracking progress. We're tracking progress and reporting it up to the PMO. We're working on many projects at one time, and we're basically playing a coordinator role. What we need to do is shift to a strategic leadership role where we're driving strategic organizational change across the enterprise. That's where we add value. That's where our biggest value proposition is as practitioners, in my belief.
I think there is a very good slide in your presentation where you talk about change management and the 3 levels of change management there are. And there are 3 of them. And at the very bottom is the first level where we talk about changing of processes and tools, which is probably the place where many of us currently are stuck. What are the other 2 levels above that? And this is pretty much where you want us to move into.
Right. There's second and third order changes. A second order change is where employees need to learn new skills, new attitudes, new behaviors to do their jobs. Right. This becomes a challenge for organizations to get people to shift and embrace this. As strategic project leaders, this is where we should be in leading them and helping them to embrace these changes. Third order changes is basically where organizations really have to confront their values and their business models. Both second and third order changes are very difficult to execute, and they're not easily reversible. Whereas level 1 changes are, you're changing some processes and some procedures. These are sort of your typical projects that run through your PMO, and there's a never-ending set of them. Those projects need to get done. There's value. But those projects are primarily being done by coordinators. We need to focus on level 2, level 3 changes where organizations and executives have to execute change in a rapid pace across the enterprise and pull people together that have to work together to be able to successfully execute this.
Do you have an example for us of such a strategic initiative?
Sure. I mean, just take an example where you might have an organization who has multiple lines of business, and customers maybe overlap across those lines of business, and customer information is managed differently in those lines of business or in silos. And a lot of it comes from how an organization might have grown organically, right, through a very rapid growth rate. I've seen this in numerous industries. So an example might be how do I take customer information across the enterprise and consolidate it and make sure that everyone has a view of that information in a way that is meaningful and that drives value for the organization and reduces redundancy, and it creates efficiency and reduces risk and enhances revenue. Those are the strategic types of projects that we want to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. And at first, this sounds like we're changing the processes of how this is done, but in truth, we're changing more. We're changing people's attitudes towards that data, towards the customer. We're changing our culture, how we are perceived by the customer as an organization where everything is done the same way across our various business units.
Absolutely. And the customers are going to see value in that if it's done well. They're going to see how they expect organizations to be coordinated internally, to have these systems and processes in place. We've all experienced, large companies where we get passed around from site to site trying to solve our problems, and we walk away with unfortunately a poor experience. Mm-hmm. So executives are trying to solve these problems. They show up in numerous ways, but ultimately it's about driving value in the organization. That value then becomes transparent to their customers and to their stakeholders.
Now, a true Agilist would say this could be done using agile methodologies, and it probably could. I'm not discrediting that. However, where does the value of the strategic leader now come into play in these kind of strategic initiatives? What does he or she do that changes the game for the company?
I think, in a very short phrase, I think a strategic project leader offers their leadership as a service that is either going to be consumed by their stakeholders, and they're either going to come back and continue to consume it because they get value out of that service, or they're going to go somewhere else and find it. And if we think about what's happened in our industry, a lot of people are going somewhere else to find valuable leadership services. So a strategic project leader offers up their project management leadership as a service for their stakeholders to consume, for their customers to consume. And in this model, we have to look at, we're not just focused on maybe our end users of the product or our sponsor. A strategic project leader views the project organization as all of its stakeholders, our team members, our customers, advisory people who keep us within the legal realms of the project and the policies and the industry standards that we need to stay within. We look at all of those people as customers of our leadership service.
You have been advocating the strategic project leader for quite some time, and the new book is actually out, second edition, right?
Yes, the first one came out in 2007. The second edition just came out this year, actually in September of this year, and it's great to have it out and see it in print, and it's a rewarding feeling.
All right. Now, we've defined the problem, we've shown the solution. Let's come back to the topic of your presentation. The 5 competencies to successfully drive strategic initiatives. Why don't we talk to each one a little bit, explain it a little more in detail what it is and how our listeners can gain that particular skill. So the first one at the bottom of the pyramid is building the foundation of knowledge, skill, and experience. What is it? How do I obtain it?
Absolutely. First of all, one of the things we have to think about before we set up these competencies is we have to basically take a customer perspective. And when I say customer, that's our team members, our stakeholders, our end users. It's everyone in our project organization. We have to understand their perspective of this project. And their perspective is, if we just basically define what a project is, right? If you look at any project management book, right, we know it's temporary. It hasn't been done before. It's time limited. There's stakeholders involved. There's matrix resources involved, right? If we look at this basic concept, here's something that hasn't been done before. Typically, customers who are looking to achieve a goal or a benefit, and their perspective of this project is they want some level of advice and recommendations. They want to know, how is the best way to execute this? And we are the people as practitioners that need to drive that experience and drive that level of advice and recommendations. We also know that there's risk entailed with every project, right? People are investing time and money to try to create benefits. And to achieve those benefits, we have to take on certain risk. Well, from a customer perspective, whether it's your business analyst, your engineer, your software developer, your sponsor, these people demand what I would call trust-based relationships. They want somebody who is in it for them, not just in it for themselves. Think of the last time maybe you took on a project. Maybe you renovated your kitchen or a bedroom. Maybe you settled an estate for someone in your family. This is something you hadn't done before. You don't have a lot of detailed experience with. What are you looking for? You're looking for a trust-based relationship with someone who understands how to execute these temporary endeavors.
Okay. So, did we just jump from the bottom of the pyramid to the middle of the pyramid there at some point? Do you think, we went from the project program management knowledge to the trust-based relationship, right?
Well, we did and we didn't. Let's start at the base again. So the base of the pyramid is our project management knowledge, skills, and experience. And the idea is we have to continue to grow the base of our competencies. The base is our project management knowledge. So what are we reading? Are we surfing Facebook, or are we reading content that's going to continually enhance our knowledge around project management? So we have to continue to be aggressive in acquiring knowledge, but not just acquiring knowledge for the sake of acquiring knowledge. We have to acquire it so we can convert it into skills, tangible leadership skills, tangible tools that we can execute with our stakeholders. When we execute our skills, we actually drive experiences, learning experiences for ourselves. So we have to continue to acquire knowledge, convert it to skills, drive those skills out in practice, in our jobs, to create learning experiences for us. That is the first basic competency. And it's more than just getting a PMP. It's more than just passing a test. This is something that we have to do on every project. Every project we should try to enhance, acquire new knowledge, convert it into a skill, execute that skill to experience it. The next competency is what I typically call subject matter expertise. And this sometimes is not fully understood unless you read it and understand my point of view here. Subject matter expertise is knowing something about your customer, right? And remember, as a strategic project leader, everyone is our customer. We're offering a service to our team members, our stakeholders. So we have to know something about our customer that they wouldn't expect us to know. And we have to continue to acquire that. So as we engage with new stakeholders on new projects, we have to be very aggressive in acquiring additional subject matter expertise about what their needs are, what they're trying to accomplish. Once we do that, we have a base of knowledge of project management knowledge, skills, and experience, and understanding our customer. That provides the foundation of then driving out and achieving these trust-based relationships.
Right, which is the next level up, right?
Right. So the third,
and the next skill.
Right. So the next competency is using our base, our customer knowledge, our application knowledge, and our project management knowledge, skill, and experience to basically drive and create what I call trust-based relationships. And I break trust down into 4 components. Actually, David Maister is an author who's written several books on this topic. But if you look at trust, Warren Bennis, who's a leadership writer, he says trust is really about competency, but it's also about keeping your ambitions in check. And in this temporary environment where project roles are less defined, there's more risk involved in the work, there's more ambiguity, building these relationships is critical. So trust can be broken down into 4 components. Credibility. Credibility is essentially our content knowledge. Our content knowledge comes from the 2 previous competencies, our project management knowledge, skill, and experience, and acquiring subject matter expertise around our customers. Understanding that and having that content knowledge is one thing, but we've got to be able to articulate it in the right place at the right time. So what I ask people to do is find something about your customer that they wouldn't expect you to know and articulate it well. The next component of trust is reliability. It's action driven, right? People want to see you fulfill your promises. You can be the smartest person in the room, have tons of credibility, but if it's not actionable, eventually people are going to find somebody else that is going to satisfy that need for reliability. So one of the things I suggest to people is let's not focus on doing what you're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to post our meeting minutes to SharePoint. Yeah, that's being reliable, right? But people expect you to do that. If you really want to deepen that trust-based relationship, let's focus on ambiguity. Let's focus on resolving ambiguity with our stakeholders. And we know in projects, there's tons of ambiguity. We're swimming in it. Find little things, whether it's in emails, in conversations, things where maybe people are not connected, or maybe there's a certain level of uncertainty. Resolve ambiguity. Make a promise, follow up on it, and resolve it. This is where people now can connect your actions to your promises, but what you're also doing is you're resolving a level of anxiety. You know, where there's ambiguity, there's uncertainty. Where there's uncertainty, there's risk. And very often where there's risk, there's the dreaded 4-letter F word, fear. So if we can resolve ambiguity on a consistent basis, our stakeholders will see us as reliable. We also have intimacy, which is being able to talk about topics that we're typically not able to talk about with stakeholders. If we're able to have a level of intimacy with our stakeholders, we have more information. More information gives us more capability to execute, okay? If we only know half the story, we cannot execute at a level that we need to on strategic projects. And then low self-orientation. Low self-orientation is about convincing people that you're in it for them. It's really wrapped around this idea of servant leadership and basically making sure that people see you, that you're not in it for yourself, but you're really in it for them. So trust-based relationships is in the middle of this pyramid. It's our third competency, but it's absolutely critical to be able to initiate and sustain organizational change.
The next competency up is that you have to be able to create opportunities to be a consultative leader.
Yes, consultative leadership. And this is where we have to work our way up the pyramid. We can't just jump into trying to be a consultative leader. Consultative leadership is really founded in two areas. Number one, offering our leadership as a service, which we've talked about, but also being able to advise and advise well. Our goal is not to tell people what to do, right? I think people are tired of having project managers tell people what to do, right? People would rather work in teams and self-organize. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So consultative leadership is this idea of offering a service, but also helping people to figure out what is the best way, what is the best decision to make, what is the best way to tackle these tasks in our plan. And the goal is not to tell them what to do, but for them to help them get from point A to point B, but own the path from point A to point B. There's more ownership, there's more accountability, right? So consultative leadership is not something that we can just jump into. If we develop these trust-based relationships based upon content knowledge and our project management expertise, guess what? Our stakeholders will ask us to enter into that role. Consultative leadership is a privilege. We don't execute consultative leadership until we've earned the right to be an advisor, until we've earned the right to offer our leadership service to them.
And at the top of the pyramid, bolster courage.
Courage. Well, courage is really the mortar of the pyramid. I really think it holds the whole piece together. And the idea behind courage is that we've got to internally have the fortitude to transform ourselves, to basically move from a coordinator to a leader. It takes courage to articulate content knowledge in front of a customer, right? It takes courage to acquire something, some knowledge and be able to articulate it, especially when your customers may know more about the topic than you do. It takes courage to get into these trust-based relationships. Guess what? If I'm in a trust-based relationship, I'm more accountable. It takes courage to advise and consult. So we have to continually transform ourselves personally. And the way we do that is we have to be excited about the work that we're doing. We have to be excited about the projects and the value that we're creating. And if we do that, we start to then see that withholding my leadership service to my stakeholders is of greater risk to my stakeholders and customers than the personal risk of failure is to me. Once I see that withholding my leadership service is of greater risk to my community, to my stakeholders, than the personal risk of me failing, then I will have the courage to continue to change my own behaviors to acquire these skills.
All right. So in summary, the 5 competencies to successfully drive strategic initiatives in your pyramid are bottom up, the project and program management knowledge and skills and experience. The subject matter expertise is the second one. The third, the trust-based relationships. Then we move into consultative leadership. And at the very top of the pyramid, courage. When you developed your presentation, what was the golden nugget that you wanted the attendees to take home?
Wake up.
Wake up. The transformation has been here. We have been redefined.
Yeah. I mean, what I like to do, what I try to do is to make them be aware of what's happening in their environment. Because sometimes we're so busy. There's so many mixed messages out there. So I try to challenge my attendees to maybe think a little bit differently about what's happening. But ultimately, the golden nugget is that they and we as a community have a tremendous service to offer our organizations. And not only do we have the opportunity to drive change, I would say in some cases we have an obligation to go through this personal transformation to drive strategic change in our organizations. Because our organizations need to be competitive, they need to be healthy, because this is where our children are going to work.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today, Jack.
Thank you, Cornelius.